What's up, everyone? Back at it again. It is DW Darkwing Dad, and today I'm going to be giving you a look into the making of my Subzero mask. Now, this tutorial is more than just the mask itself. I am going to highlight what I do, blue overlay skins, the lights, some of the features of it. But more importantly, this tutorial here is just going to kind of recap and give you some more settings and ways that you can 3D print something with minimal post-processing. Now, I already did the one Subzero mask where I added the lights and I showed you guys how I sanded it and how I painted it, but we're not going to do that in here. This one, I'm just going to touch more on supporting the model and, like I said, some essential settings that I have really to just get an awesome looking print. If you're using silk, or even if you're just using regular PLA, something where you can just let the machine do the work, this is going to be the tutorial for you. So what I'm going to do first is just kind of show you on this particular model how I slice this, some of the custom supports that I use to basically support this model. Again, I'll rehash on some of my settings, removing the supports, and then installing all the LEDs, the lights, all the fun stuff that makes this mask look so awesome. So without any further ado, let's get into it. These are some of the essential settings that I use to get a nice, clean, quality print. So now that I've gone over some of my print settings, I'm going to flip the camera around and show you some of my support settings in Cura. Supports can really be the deal breaker from a good print to a great print. Show you some support options for properly supporting your model, some of the settings I use, and then show you how they are to come off when you use those settings. I promise by 2023 I will learn how to do picture-in-picture, but for now you get this grainy looking video here of the Subzero mask. Obviously you want to look and see where your overhangs are, and this mask has a lot of steep overhangs, and if we did touching on build plate, none of these here would be supported. So all these overhangs here would just be kind of printing in the air, and sometimes it can work out okay, but a lot of the times you end up start getting sagging, and it just takes away from, you know, the overall look, and then you have to sand it and you have to fix it, and we don't want to do that. Because I will do a 65 to 66 degree overhang, and I will leave my supports with everywhere. So yes, it is going to support a majority of the model, but again, we have a lot of overhangs. You can see all these here. These are heavy overhangs. If we don't support these, a lot of these could fail. I'm not saying all of them, but more are going to fail than less. You'll see in the middle here, what I have done is I have added some custom support. So Cura, whatever version you're running, to the left here, it does have something that's called custom supports. And what these are is you can add supports to whatever you want. So this area here on the mask, I had printed this without doing it and it failed. It broke right around in this area. What this custom support plugin does is it allows you to select a size. You can do a square, you can do a circle, whatever you want, and you just simply click and it drops a support to the build plate. So I had noticed that there was a lot of just thinner areas right here where there was no red, meaning it wasn't going to have any supports. Now I could change the overhang, but as you change that, it is going to add supports everywhere else. It's going to make these basically support it more, and you're going to waste filament. So you can see there when I change that, so I had it set at 66. Okay, now let's change it to, say, 55. And you can see how much more red pops up. So it starts to support these areas, but then we're just wasting filament because all of these overhangs are getting spread out, and we're telling the system we need to support it when we really don't. So by using the custom supports, we can just simply click and it will create a support for where we need it. So we want to support it here, we want to support it there. So basically go through and build your own custom support, and it will go ahead and make the support where you click. Change this back to 66, and now we can see how much more all the overhang support has reduced, and that's going to save us time and filament. So these supports are really essential for this piece, and doing this custom support mod, it really helped me save a lot of time. As you can see here, hopefully this isn't too close, you can see that it printed the grill just fine, both inside and out. Completely supported it. and printed it just fine. With my supports, I do like to use brim because it is going to give it additional adhesion and make it stronger. We don't want one of these supports blowing out. Very bad things can happen, obviously, when supports blow out. The last thing I'll touch on is just the density of my supports. I typically leave them at between 3 and 4%. Now, I do recommend if you're doing a higher support, increase the density of your support. I typically do mine between 3 and 5%. Now, I've talked before that silk is a little bit more delicate and that don't be afraid to add an extra 2 or 3% to your infill density. Same thing with your supports. I think a safer place is around the 4 or 5. And just a couple tips for you there in case you're trying to do a model like this or something similar. Now what I'm going to do is show you actually just how firm these supports were and just give you some tips and tricks on how to take supports off nice and clean without cracking your model or doing any damage. So let's give you some quick build plate adhesion tips. A lot of people ask me, you know, with glass beds, what do you recommend? Hairspray and brim has been the best thing that I have switched to. So I have a Creality plate, and this is a brand spanking new plate. Flip it over, and I put a little bit of hairspray on. I use brim, and I have absolutely no issues. This print has actually been now completed for about 2 days maybe. I just haven't got to it. And if you want to know how well my build plate adhesion is, there you go. So with a properly leveled bed, I do use those silicone bed mounts that I speak of, and just a good brim, a little bit of hairspray, and you're good to go. You want to remember when you are removing something from a build plate is you want it completely cool. When there's still heat resonating up on the build plate, it can definitely create issues. So always make sure it is fully cool. I know some people throw them in freezers. I just kind of let them sit here for a few hours, 2 days in this instance.
Unreal.
Nice and cool. Go ahead and grab your scraper. Kind of start from the back, and I'll weaken one side, weaken the other side, and you can see it pops right off. But once you start getting that going, you can see how shiny that is there. It is actually reflecting the phone off of this. That's how good of a brim I got there. All right. Start taking these supports off. A lot of people have different techniques, different things to get supports off. Slow and steady wins the race. So something like this is a silk printed mask that I'm doing. I'm not doing any painting. I don't want to crack this thing or chip it or do anything. So I really just kind of start off by first peeling off my brim. And what that'll do is that'll pull any weak supports that really aren't contributing to the stabilization of the model. And you can see how it's pulling some of these weaker supports off, so that's always good. What I start doing is just looking towards these bigger pieces and supporting the model with one hand and then just kind of pulling them with another. Especially with silk, silk does tend to be a little bit more delicate depending on your infill rate. So always support the model with one hand and then just kind of pull it with the other. Now, when you get to areas like this support is pretty good. It sits on there pretty well. What I'm gonna do is kind of break it off in sections. So I'm gonna flip this around and just kind of look and play with the model for a little bit. Again, we don't wanna pull too hard and potentially crack the model. I'm just gonna go through here and try to weaken this a little bit. Now, if it doesn't come off, don't try to force it. We'll get our snips here. This is on here pretty good, so I'm gonna grab my snips here and just start pulling this off, trying not to hit the model, and just do kind of like a peeling method. This is all pretty dense in here, so what also I'm gonna start doing is taking my snips and trying to weaken this by just breaking this, literally just snipping it. This is all one solid piece, so by breaking it into smaller pieces, it's gonna be a lot easier to get the supports off. You know, kind of bend the pliers because we don't want to put stress on the model that could cause it to crack. So really all I'm trying to do here is just use a little bit of leverage, but not use the model as leverage. Use the existing supports as leverage, if that makes sense. So you can see how I'm trying to peel this, but I'm not prying on the model. I'm kind of using the support that's already there kind of as leverage and just peeling it up. See, more will just start to fall off as you do this. You might sit here and say, like, why, this is a bit much for taking off supports, but I have, early in 3D printing, the number of models that I broke by trying to rush and yank all these off, it was, it was quite a few. These off in a slow manner will definitely help relieve some frustration, to say the least. So this is 4% density on these supports, believe it or not. So, you know, one tip I can give you when, you know, playing around with supports, you know, 4 or 5% is really all you need. I go to PETG or PLA Plus, I'll go as low as 3%. Typically all of my supports I usually do around 4 or 5%. We got this big piece here, and this is pretty sturdy. You don't really want to just go and yank on this because this supported this whole nose piece. The last thing I want to do is pull this off and potentially crack some of this. So same thing, I'm going to take this and just start snipping some of this. And you can get bigger cutters. I'm just doing this because this is what most people use. This is what most people have. But things like needle nose pliers and different types of snips can definitely help. Attack the top of this so I can kind of remove some of this middle piece here because it's pretty big. Doing like a twisting motion, that can always help break it down. Wary of your side pieces here. You don't want to twist it and have your hand slip and hit this and crack it. And you can see it just kind of popped off once we got it weak enough, and look at how much it supported that grill, and that's why I didn't want to just go ahead and yank that off. You yank that off, you know, with one solid piece, these could come with it, you know. So pieces that are coming off pretty easy. These side pieces here, these bigger pieces, these are a little bit of a pain. This particular one, because it's got a lot of, you know, it's reliant on a lot of these supports, so you don't want to get too crazy. You start yanking on these right here with these supports still attached, you could crack this right here. And if you've got little fibers or little trash, I guess you want to call it, you can do a couple different things. You can take a soldering iron, you can take a lighter and just very gently go over it. You want to be careful though with a lighter, because if it's a lighter color and the flame is too close, it could definitely leave like some black singe marks. You can also use a small butane torch. Just practice on some models that maybe if you mess up, you're not too upset. You see there, getting the last of the supports off, and really all there is just some minor cleanup. For the most part, all of the supports came off. Just a little bit of diligence and patience. Your removal of supports, some support settings that I recommend, leaves your model looking awesome and ready to go to the next step. All right, so now it's time to start adding some of the effects and LEDs to the Subzero mask here. So what I did is I took some blue vinyl and ran it through a laminator. I also have some mirror tint, my hot glue gun, an extra glue stick if I need it, and some scissors to trim this down. So what I'm gonna start doing is taking the blue vinyl that I laminated and cutting it and fitting it into each one of these spots. Now I'm gonna do the areas on the mask that the LEDs aren't gonna be in, so the LEDs are gonna kind of be the last thing that I do. But just start trimming everything down, getting it fit to the exact spot. You can trace around, do whatever technique that you want, but basically cut it, trim it, and start gluing it in place. Just make sure you have the skin inlays as flush as you can, and then when that's all done, we're going to start adding some blue LEDs. So this one here is just a regular 3-volt blue LED, but what I do is add about a 480 ohm resistor and wire that in, and what it does is it decreases the voltage and it makes it blink. So what this will provide is a cool breathing effect on the front of the mask. So I'll take these two LEDs, mount them in the front with this mirror tint overlay, which will help the blue LED kind of reflect off of it, and it really gives it a cool effect. So here I have the LED all wired up and soldered with the resistor. I'm gonna glue one in each corner here where this triangle is, and then get it all wired up with the mirror tint overlay, and it's gonna provide a really cool effect for this mask. So now with those two front LEDs wired, mounted, and that mirror tint overlay in the back, here's a quick look at how it looks, and trust me, it looks even better in the dark. So now that we have those wired up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an LED to the front and to the back. For the other 4 LEDs I'm putting in, I'm just using pre-wired LEDs. It's always very important when you're installing LEDs to either wire up the proper resistor or just buy pre-wired ones like this that have the resistor in, because if you don't, it will burn up the LED over time. I'm going to place them in strategic places where I think will really kind of showcase and highlight and just give a really cool effect to the mask. Usually this little triangle piece right here in the front, and then something in the back, that way the whole cheek is lit up. So here I'm just showing you how I'm routing the wires. I'm trying to go along the channels of those openings, and really all you have to do is connect the positive to the positive and the negative to the negative. I like to use a combination of soldering the wires together and then covering the solder with hot glue. It's perfectly fine. Hot glue is an insulator. It's really okay, especially for a low voltage setup like this. Just be careful where you're putting these. You don't want these hitting each other, so make sure you either use heat shrink if you're not sure, or just a little bit of extra hot glue to be safe. So now my power source. So these are 3-volt LEDs. However, we do have quite a few hooked up, and we have those resistors. So I wanted to bump the voltage up just a little bit. So what I did was wire them in series. So you take 2 batteries and you basically jump the positive of one to the negative of the other, and then you can see where you make your connections. What I'm gonna do is put those batteries in this nice little crevice under the chin, and they'll fit absolutely perfectly. Any other battery source, it's really hard to put anywhere else. I'll be able to run the wires all along the cheek and put a switch up at the top here, but these CR batteries really do work great. Once I have all that done and everything, it's time to just continue to insert the skins after I've installed the LEDs, and really just wire management, running all of these along the crevices and the seams. It really leaves for a nice install. And then what we'll do here is hook up a switch up in this upper cheek to turn all the lights on. So now we just need to add a switch to be able to turn our LEDs on and off with the mask. This magnetic reed switch is perfect because it's sleek and low profile. It works by magnetism, and when a magnet comes in contact with it, it slides the tiny spring inside up, completing the circuit and turning the LEDs on. This is really a great option because it's super easy to install, it's low profile, it won't hit your face, and I have a full tutorial on how to wire this up and do this on my other Subzero mask, which the link will be in the description. What's also great about the reed switch is I was able to make a method of creating a type of slide switch by incorporating a washer with the existing magnet that we need. Here, let me show you. So I've got my reed switch right here, and you can see I just glued a metal washer above it just using some standard super glue. And what you do is you put the magnet on and you slide it down, and you can see when it comes in contact with the reed switch, it turns the LEDs on. So all you have to do to turn it off is basically slide it away from the reed switch. The switch demagnetizes and it turns off. Slide it back down, it'll turn back on. This is really great because it's sleek, it's low profile, it's super easy, and it's an awesome option for masks where you can't put big latching switches or something like that on there. Very easy, very awesome option for really any mask. I've added this magnetic reed switch to numerous masks, and it really is a great touch. It keeps everything sleek, hidden, and uniform no matter what type of mask it is, whether it be a painted or a silk printed mask. It looks awesome. And speaking of awesome, let's get some of these night shots. So you can see here, really cool effect, the blue skin overlays, the type of breathing effect there. Everything just looks really clean and really nice. All we have to do is basically add a strap. So with that said, let's get some final shots. All right, guys, well, that's pretty much it. That is the tutorial. Like I said, this was kind of a mashup. If you're trying to make realistically anything where you don't have to do either as much post-processing, as much sanding and filling and things like that, or if you're just trying to do something like this where you're just simply printing it, getting a great quality print, and then adding some cool things like some overlays or some LEDs. And if you're wearing it at your next con event, you can just print it, throw a strap on. It looks awesome. Wanted to kind of give you guys a bird's eye view and show you how I do it. Definitely some cool features and a cool, awesome look for these masks. Obviously the print settings and everything totally help. I always get some really awesome comments, people saying, hey, it looks awesome. How do you do that? So this video is for all you guys who requested this. Obviously, if you have any questions or anything, make sure to drop me a comment. You know, I'll help you out. So a lot of information. Hopefully you guys liked the video. If you did, go ahead and give me a thumbs up and let me know. If you guys have any questions on anything, feel free to drop me a comment, shoot me an email, hit me up on social media. You know, I'll reply back. Speaking of tutorials, this was kind of the precursor for the next video that's coming out. I am making silk printing part 3. And this is going to be a lot more in depth. I'm going to add some of the new settings that I found in Cura that are just helping me produce just awesome prints like this. Touch more on supports. We're going to touch more on some of those new settings that I've hinted towards. We're going to talk about cooling. That's something that we haven't talked about before. Positioning of the model. So these are all things that really weren't touched on in silk printing part 1 and part 2. Once this silk printing part 3 is done, I mean, you are going to be printing, you probably will be printing better than me.
It was supposed to be a pep talk.
These 3 videos are really going to get you set up for success. And the awesome thing about it is, I mean, 95% of the tips that I'm giving you, you can use with PLA, you can use with PETG. Obviously, things like temp towers, retraction, those are going to vary based on the types of filaments you're using. Going to be printing out awesome things like this. I always get comments, people are like, you know, how did you get that? You know, what are your settings, this and that? Don't worry, because I'm creating DW printing profiles in Cura. They're gonna be uploaded on a Google Drive, and save that right to Cura, load that into your Cura slicer, boom, you'll be good to go. You'll have the exact same settings as me. So I'm gonna have a couple different ones. I'm working on all of them right now, but when silk printing part 3 comes out, you're gonna have access to all 3 of those DW printing profiles, and you will be good to go. That's pretty much it for this video, guys. I appreciate you watching. Thank you to each and every one of my subscribers and viewers. If you're not subscribed to the channel and you like all things 3D printing, cosplay, DIY, Funko Pops, collectibles, Marvel, all the stuff we're doing on the channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button, because we got a lot more in store. I gotta get going and add some cool lights and effects to this Subzero mask, but let me know what you guys think. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up, click the subscribe button if you're not subscribed, and until next time, DW out. Later.